When you look at Bryson DeChambeau, uh, he seemingly did everything right.
Oh, absolutely, by every conventional metric.
Right. I mean, he completely re-engineered his body.
Uh-huh.
He put on, what, 40 pounds of muscle
Yeah, around 40 pounds.
just to hit a golf ball harder. And he analyzed the physics of the game to such an extreme degree that he had these custom single-length irons built specifically for his swing.
He was obsessed with the data.
Completely obsessed over every possible external metric. He basically built what looked like the absolute perfect, unbreakable architecture for success.
Right.
And then he completely fell apart.
He hit a massive wall.
So today's deep dive is really about that. It's about why all that scaffolding of success, all the outward performance and the life hacks, why they just do not matter one bit if there's no actual house inside that scaffolding.
Yeah, and we are looking at a really fascinating stack of sources today to understand this, to understand the profound difference between performing a transformation and actually experiencing one.
Because they look the same from the outside.
Exactly. They look identical until the pressure hits. So today we've got political philosophy, daily essays, sports devotionals like Ollie Hillman's Birdies, Bogeys, and Life Lessons, and leadership texts from folks like Tony Dungy and George Raveling.
It's a huge variety of sources.
It is, but there's a clear through line connecting all of them. Whether we are talking about a 16th century political strategist or, an Olympic figure skater or a heavyweight boxer, they all point to the exact same truth.
Which is that you cannot fake a foundation.
You really can't. Finding what you genuinely love and actually organizing your life around it is the ultimate shortcut to resilience.
There is this quote, and it was kind of buried in our research stack from the Argentine singer-songwriter Facundo Cabral.
Yeah.
And it frames this so perfectly.
Oh, the freest slave quote.
Yes, he says, I am the freest slave, slave to what I love. And, at first glance, it feels like a total paradox.
Right, because slavery and freedom are absolute opposites.
Exactly. But he is pointing to this search for the ultimate inner operating system, the kind of internal center that keeps you from burning out when the universe decides to test you.
Because to be mastered by something you actually chose, that isn't bondage at all.
Right.
It's really the deepest possible form of liberty. The freest slave isn't wasting all their energy managing the perception of freedom.
They're just living it.
Exactly. There is zero gap between their inner reality and their outer expression. And I think to really understand what that genuine internal transformation looks like, we have to start by examining its exact opposite.
The fake version.
Yeah, we have to look at transformation as theater.
And Robert Greene writes extensively about this, right? When he analyzes the political strategies of Niccolo Machiavelli.
He does. He points to this historical pattern that he calls the fake traditionalist.
Which sounds like an oxymoron.
It kind of is. And the absolute masterclass in this was Cosimo de' Medici in the Republic of Florence.
Okay, so set the scene for us here.
So Medici comes to power, right? But he understands that if he just outright declares himself a dictator, it's going to trigger massive resistance.
Because the citizens of Florence love their republic.
Exactly. They pride themselves on it. So what does he do? He preserves all the outward forms of that republic.
He keeps the wrapper intact.
You got it. The civic offices remain open. The public ceremonies happen right on schedule. The language of civic freedom is still spoken in the streets. He keeps the outer wrapper completely intact as camouflage.
Wow.
So in appearance, the Florence Republic endured for an entire generation under his rule. But in substance,
He was actually in charge.
yeah, he was quietly dismantling its actual power. He was consolidating all the real leverage for himself behind closed doors. So the inner substance completely changed, while the outward performance stayed exactly the same.
It's the political equivalent of a Hollywood movie set.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Because if you are standing on the street looking at it, you see this beautiful, authentic-looking house front. I mean, the brickwork is detailed, there are little flower boxes in the windows, the paint is fresh.
It looks perfect.
But if you walk just 10 feet around to the back, there is no house.
Right.
It is entirely empty space supported by cheap wooden scaffolding just holding up a facade. Like, it looks fantastic on camera, but nobody can actually live inside it.
And that physical metaphor translates so perfectly to our internal psychology.
Wow.
Jean-Paul Sartre explored this through the concepts of adaptive love versus vocational love.
Okay, break those down for us.
So adaptive love is when you modify your own desires to fit a situation.
Like trying to fit in.
Exactly. Let's
Okay.
say you take a corporate job you don't really care about, but, the salary's great. So you slowly force yourself to adopt the hobbies, the jargon, the aggressive mindset of that specific culture.
Oh man, I think we've all been there.
Right. You make yourself want the promotion even though it doesn't align with who you actually are. You're basically building the Hollywood facade.
And vocational love is the opposite.
Yeah. Vocational love is that chosen bondage Cabral is talking about. It is waking up and doing the hard work because the work itself contains intrinsic meaning for you. You aren't building a set. You're building an actual house, brick by brick.
Because if you don't possess that vocational love and you spend your whole life putting up the facade, things eventually start to look incredibly strange.
They get distorted.
Yeah, there is this piercing metaphor from the philosopher Henri Emile, which Leo Tolstoy actually cites in our stack.
Oh, the dancing metaphor.
Yes. Yeah. Emile describes people who have essentially destroyed their own inner religious conscience, but they're still aggressively going through the motions of religious activity.
Going through the theater of it.
Right. And he says watching them is like standing outside a grand hall in the snow, looking through a soundproof window at people dancing.
That's such a haunting image.
It really is.
Yeah.
Because you cannot hear the music. The dancing just looks completely absurd. You're just watching people flail around.
And without an internal organizing principle, without the music, every external action you take eventually becomes arbitrary. And it's exhausting.
It has to be exhausting to keep that up.
Which really asks a demanding question of you, the listener. Why do we put so much exhaustive energy into managing our appearances? Into polishing the facade of the Hollywood set, instead of actually organizing our lives from the inside out?
Because that Hollywood set, it works perfectly when the weather is clear.
Sure, on a sunny day.
The problem is what happens when the pressure hits. A bad storm rolls in, and that cheap wooden scaffolding just snaps.
It collapses completely.
And we saw this happen in real time on the PGA Tour.
Mm-hmm.
This brings us back to Bryson DeChambeau.
Right.
He had built the ultimate external architecture.
He really had. He was entirely devoted to the analytical theories found in a book called The Golfing Machine. By every outward conventional metric, he was doing everything right to optimize his performance.
Everything was perfectly calculated.
But then the storm hits. He starts shooting 75s and 76s.
Which, for a professional of his caliber,
is an absolute disaster. He becomes deeply frustrated, he alienates the people around him, and the entire structure just begins to crack. But at his absolute lowest point, he makes an observation that reorients his entire career.
What did he say?
He said, "I saw that I had made my golf score the center of my life."
Wow. So when the score dipped, the music stopped.
Exactly.
He was suddenly just a guy swinging a piece of metal in a field, angry and miserable.
Because his score had become the sole metric for his human value. And this perfectly illustrates Tolstoy's thesis on human struggle.
How so?
Well, Tolstoy argued that when a person is truly consumed by problems, there's ultimately only one root cause: a lack of faith.
Now, wait. When people hear the word faith, they usually assume we're talking about, like, religious performance or church attendance.
Right, but Tolstoy is defining faith in a much broader psychological sense here. He defines it as possessing a genuine organizing conscience.
A center of gravity.
Yes, a center that does not fluctuate with your daily results. DeChambeau had built this brilliant, innovative outer architecture on a foundation that just evaporated the moment the scoreboard turned against him.
So how did he recover?
His recovery only happened when he found a deeper foundation. In his specific case, he turned to a faith-based book, which actually echoes the principles found in Wes Neal's Handbook of Athletic Perfection.
Okay.
And he reoriented his center so that his scorecard was no longer tasked with answering his deepest life questions.
But let me push back on this for a second. If I am listening to this, I probably care deeply about my own version of a score.
Sure, we all have one.
Right. That might be my salary, my quarterly KPIs, getting into a top-tier grad school, or just outperforming the competition in my industry.
Yep.
If I stop letting my score dictate my focus, don't I just lose my competitive edge? Like, how do you separate your ambition from your identity without just, giving up?
That's the trap, right?
Yeah.
But you have to look at what DeChambeau actually did. He didn't stop being fiercely competitive.
He didn't quit golf.
No, he didn't abandon the outer work at all. He kept the added muscle. He kept playing with those custom single-length irons. He remained highly analytical.
So what changed?
He shifted his spiritual priority. The goal is not to stop caring about your performance. The goal is to ensure your outer work rests on an inner center that cannot be shaken by a bad Tuesday.
Right.
You move from the exhausting, adaptive love of constantly managing your metrics to the vocational love that actually frees you from the tyranny of the scoreboard.
And once you figure out whether the score is your center, it completely dictates how you interact with other people,
Oh, 100%.
especially the people who disagree with you,
Because when your center is weak, every single interaction becomes a potential threat.
which is something Tony Dungy covers extensively in his Daily Challenge Leadership Devotional.
Yes, he makes a really important distinction there.
He draws a hard line between conflict and combat. He basically argues that conflict is totally unavoidable in life. It is just two people looking at a problem from different perspectives.
It's just a reality of human interaction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But combat is a choice. Combat is two people actively trying to destroy each other.
Because if a person has made their position or their righteousness or their score the absolute center of their life, then any disagreement is an existential threat.
They feel like they're dying.
Yeah, they are forced into combat mode because the stakes feel absolute. If someone proves them wrong, it's like their entire identity just ceases to exist.
You know, it functions exactly like an emotional immune system.
I like that. How do you mean?
Well, if your inner center is strong, if you have that Tolstoy organizing conscience we talked about, a disagreement is just like catching a common cold.
Right.
Your immune system recognizes the problem, processes it, clears it out, and you move on.
It handles the conflict.
Exactly. But if your
Oh.
ego or your score is your center, a disagreement triggers an autoimmune response. The body attacks itself.
Oh, wow.
The conflict becomes total war, and you end up destroying your own team over a minor disagreement.
That is exactly it. When your ego is your center, your psychological immune system attacks your own joints. And Dungy observes this by looking at the life of Jesus, specifically referencing the principle of peacemaking from the book of Matthew.
What does he point out there?
He points out that Jesus did not bend on essential truths, but when people fiercely disagreed with him, he didn't automatically put up defensive walls.
He didn't go into combat mode.
Right. He actively looked for common ground without compromising his core essentials. You can only hold your convictions firmly without needing to demolish the other person if your actual self isn't constructed out of those arguments.
And George Raveling brings this exact same philosophy into the basketball locker room.
He really does.
He draws on the leadership principles from a book called The Twin Thieves. And he says, before our players love the message, we have to get them to love the messenger.
Which is so crucial for any leader.
You simply cannot have surface-level relationships and expect to wield deep influence over a team.
No, you can't.
But, okay, put yourself in the shoes of a manager listening to this. If I'm a manager trying to implement this, aren't I just using connection as a strategy?
What do you mean?
Like, if I take Raveling's advice and start building bridges just so I can get my employees to hit their KPIs, how is that any different from Cosimo de' Medici setting up a fake republic in Florence? I mean, I'm just manipulating them with the appearance of care.
Right. That is a great question, and answering it requires brutal honesty with yourself about your own motives. You have to look at your relationships at work and at home right now. Are you building bridges because you genuinely desire connection and reconciliation?
Aye.
Or are you deploying empathy because it is currently the most effective management posture to extract productivity?
Ouch. Yeah, that's a tough mirror to look into.
Robert Greene warns us about this. He says to watch out for the gap between the performance of loyalty and the reality of ambition. Because people, whether they are your employees, your kids, or your spouse, they have an incredibly sharp intuition.
They can feel it.
They always sense the gap. They know when they are being strategically managed rather than genuinely known. And when they sense that manipulation, the performance collapses and the influence just vanishes.
Because it's a Hollywood set.
Exactly. True influence requires genuine investment. The free slave builds bridges because their internal architecture demands it, not because some management book recommended it.
Okay, so we have established how this inner center affects your daily performance and how it dictates your relationships.
Yep.
But the ultimate test of this architecture happens when you are entirely alone, facing utter defeat.
The hardest part.
Muhammad Ali has a quote in our research stack that reframes this entirely. He said, "Only a man who knows what it's like to be defeated can reach down to the bottom of his soul and come up with the extra ounce of power it takes to win when the match is even."
And you know, that sounds like a statement about physical stamina, right? Like cardio conditioning.
Right.
But he is actually making a profound psychological and metaphysical claim there.
Because the bottom of the soul is not a muscle group.
No, it's not.
It is the foundation. He is saying that defeat isn't just an obstacle you have to get past. Defeat is the exact mechanism that reveals whether you actually have a real house behind your scaffolding.
Yes.
You only find out what is down there when your momentum is completely stripped away.
Exactly. And if we connect this back to the golf course, DeChambeau shooting a 76 is the exact equivalent of Ali taking a heavy beating in the early rounds of a title fight.
It is a total stress test on the foundation.
Right. And Conrad Hilton, the guy who built the Hotel Empire, he had an observation about this that frequently gets dismissed as like motivational fluff.
Yeah.
But it is actually a very sharp psychological insight.
What do you say?
He said, successful people keep moving, they make mistakes, but they don't quit.
And if your center is the outcome, if your score is your entire identity, a mistake is an existential crisis.
You can't handle it.
Right. You cannot afford to be wrong, so a failure paralyzes you. But if your center holds, a mistake is just data. It is just information you use to adjust your swing.
The freest slave can afford to be wrong. Their identity doesn't collapse when their performance dips. But I will say, reaching that state, actually getting to the bottom of the soul without panicking, requires a specific method.
Right. It's easier said than done.
Exactly. And this is where Olympic figure skater Kristi Yamaguchi provides an incredibly practical technology for surviving those early rounds of defeat.
She faced unbelievable pressure.
Unbelievable. And she approaches massive pressure by starting with the ultimate goal, working backward, and giving herself extremely small, immediate targets for the day.
So why does human psychology require us to shrink the target like that when we are under pressure?
It is basically a mechanism for bypassing the brain's panic response.
The amygdala.
Exactly. If you wake up every day and only focus on the massive magnitude of an Olympic gold medal, your amygdala just fires continuously. The gap between where you are and where you need to be is too vast, and the pressure overwhelms your nervous system.
You burn out before you even reach the ice.
Yamaguchi's method works because shrinking the target down to, say, perfecting the angle of this one specific jump today keeps your nervous system calm. And it pairs perfectly with Tolstoy's observation that the two most powerful warriors are patience and time.
Ah, so you synthesize them.
Yeah.
Patience and time, combined with Yamaguchi's small, manageable daily targets, allow you to dig deep without your brain hitting the panic button.
That's the formula.
Because when you are not terrified that your entire identity is collapsing with every minor setback, whether that's on the ice or in the office, you can patiently use those small targets to tap into Ali's extra ounce of power.
Exactly right.
You survive the even match because you know exactly who you are, regardless of the outcome of that specific round.
And as we bring all these incredible voices together today, from philosophers like Plato to leaders like Dungy to athletes like Ali and DeChambeau, they are all pointing to the exact same reality.
It's universal.
It is. Plato actually offered a warning that perfectly encapsulates this entire deep dive. He said, the beginning is the most important part of the work.
Which usually we read that as simple advice about, like, prepping your materials for a project.
Right. But in this context, it is a severe warning about your internal foundations.
Because at the starting line, the fake Medicean reformer building a facade and the authentic servant building a real house, they look exactly the same.
You can't tell them apart.
They use the same vocabulary, they execute the same actions, they even smile the same way.
The difference between the Hollywood movie set and the actual brick house is entirely invisible from the street on a sunny day.
Yeah.
The difference only reveals itself over time, under immense pressure. It reveals itself in that specific moment when the match is perfectly even, you are exhausted, and you desperately need to draw something from the bottom of your soul.
The author Martha Grimes notes, "We don't know who we are until we see what we can do."
I love that.
Doing genuinely great things over a long period of time requires a deep, unshakable foundation. Your scorecard is always going to fluctuate. I mean, you will absolutely lose rounds. You will shoot a 76.
It's inevitable.
But a life centered on a chosen vocational love survives those losses because the foundation isn't built on the score.
It's built on something real. And I want to leave you, the listener, with a specific thought to mull over today as you look at your own life.
Go for it.
Imagine waking up tomorrow morning and your personal scorecard has been entirely wiped blank. Your current job title, your bank account balance, your social media presence, your hard-earned professional reputation, all of it completely gone.
A total reset.
What is the love you would still willingly be a slave to? Because whatever your answer to that question is, that is the only foundation strong enough to hold you up when the match is even.
That is the ultimate test of your interior architecture. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Before the next storm rolls in, take a walk around your own Hollywood set. Make sure there is a real house behind the facade. We will see you next time.